Today's podcast is brought to you by NCI, National Carriers. They are currently looking for company drivers, owner-operators, and students are welcome. Give NCI a call at 888-311-7076. They're currently looking for regional and OTR drivers. Again, that is 888-311-7076. Talk CDL is also brought to you by truckparkingclub.com. Sign up today, free, for when you're in a pinch and you need a spot. They offer daily and monthly parking options. Landowners, if you have any spaces you would like to rent out, go to truckparkingclub.com and sign up today. Again, that's truckparkingclub.com. Also, Tab Bank. Truckers and trucking companies, if you need help with cash flow, go to tabbank.com/talkcdl. Plus, trucking companies, if you need help with invoicing and factoring, go to tabbank.com/talkcdl.
So, I love when we get emails and pictures and videos from truck drivers, and trucking companies. We get stuff from everybody. And we don't read everybody's letter on the show.
No, we can't.
Right. We just don't get around to that because there's so much stuff that we got to talk about. But I had a guy this week, a trucker, and he's a trainer. He does all kind of stuff. Seems like a really cool dude. Sent me a letter. His name was Adam Dooley, and I thought I'd read a little bit of the email. And he had a question for me that I thought, I think I want to talk about this a little bit today because I don't really hear it being talked about as much because it involves somebody taking responsibility for their part in the industry. And we'll get to that in just a second. But here's what Adam writes. He says, "Hi, Troy. Adam here. I'm a driver and a trainer with a company I work for. I say trainer, but we hire drivers with experience. I just show them the procedures, so on and so forth. I talk to some of them after orientation if they have questions or help with anything. I've started seeing the trucking revolving door." The revolving door in trucking that's always talked about in the business from the other side of the fence. He said, planners passing loads to driver managers to pass on to drivers, lack of correct info at times. So he goes on and he talks about that a little bit. And then he ends it with, he said, I've talked with my safety team and they say once they do their job, by getting them hired and through the doors, they're pretty much done their part. He says, agreed, but I wish there were more than that the first people a new hire goes through could help with. He says, what are your thoughts, basically? And, of course I have thoughts.
Oh, of course you do, and I actually have some thoughts too.
Well, and we'll talk about it, but so just to make everybody understand, and trucking companies, this really is a podcast more for you and the drivers because everybody really has a responsibility. Now we're talking about driver retention,
right?
We're talking about driver retention, and everybody has a part in it, and including the driver. Okay, the driver has a due diligence to investigate where he's going and also to pay attention to what the recruiter is telling them on the phone because this is really where a driver gets his information. They may see some stuff and see, basic pay. A lot of companies, before a driver comes in, they'll send the driver information. Here's what your pay is, the truck, blah, blah, blah. Well, the recruiter is really his first point of contact. And the recruiter has an obligation. So what I told Adam was, yes, safety and recruiting does have a part in retention. Okay, not a big part. It's really more of an operational issue than anything because operations is charged with keeping them. But the first week or two, if you've got a lot of drivers quitting a trucking company, a lot of times somebody should be recognizing what's coming in the door and also somebody should be checking what information is being given to this driver. If the majority of them are saying, I'm quitting because I was told, like, for example, and I told Adam, here's an example. Let's say a truck driver is told, I'm going to get a brand new truck. I'm going to get assigned a brand new truck.
Right.
And he gets there and it's a 4 or 5 year old truck. Well, that driver's already looking for the back door. Now, who's responsible for that? Well, the guy that told him, that's who the truck driver is going to blame. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Recruiting.
Right. So anyways, you said you had a thought. I've got a million thoughts, but I want to include you in on this. So go ahead. Tell me what your thoughts.
Well, I mean, we pretty much think very similar when it comes to this. And I agree. When they come in, first of all, recruiting has to have all of the update information, not just with the tractors, but some of the renting areas. You know, the driver might be told, hey, yeah, you're going to get home for your 36 over the weekend, but operations might have had to have that changed, and it might now be that same way because of loads being now different. So the recruiting department must get complete up to date. And most companies, they have meetings every week to go and make sure all this is done. If they don't, they really need to, because so many things change on a weekly basis in the industry that the recruiting department and the operations department really do have to have a complete open communication when it comes to that. If anything changes in safety, that's where safety definitely needs to know. When you are saying about the drivers having a point in this and how recruiting and safety still have a part, yeah, because if the driver has an issue with their dispatcher and they've already gone to dispatch and dispatch isn't doing anything, that driver should be able to feel comfortable going to an open door to the recruiter that he went to or to safety and say, listen, I'm having this issue. I've already discussed it with him. I would like to stay, but if we can't get the situation cleared, I'm going to have to either change dispatchers or leave. And if the driver can't get through to dispatch with that, he should be able to go to another point of contact and discuss that.
Well, so let me just reel you back a little bit. And you're going like real broad here.
That's me. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I understand the operations. I wasn't even really going to get into the operational part of it. Just his question more is what, does safety, can safety do more? Recruiting and safety, can they do more as the driver's coming in the door to help keep a driver, you know what I mean, longer? And my answer really is they can. And here's what I told them also. And now I like what you said about knowing the runs and everything, because things change. And you're right. And I hadn't even really thought about that part. And that really is also should be on the truck driver's shoulders a lot. A truck driver needs to have broad shoulders and thick skin in this industry. It's just the way it works. And because you got to know, drivers, things change all the time. You can go to a company, they could have contracts. And I'll give you an example. I seen a company one time, they hired like 20 drivers to run a dedicated run on Minute Maid, right? And not long after, the runs changed. People add stops on. Okay, you got a run going from Paw Paw, Michigan to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania back. But you should know what happens if they add a stop, down in Kentucky. Now you got a triangle run. These things happen. And the one thing that recruiting should know, and this is when I worked in recruiting and safety, one of the things I used to ask a driver, because I knew myself when I was a driver, what are your real needs, driver? Like, do you have a home time? Because if you promise a driver weekends or every other weekend and he has to pick up his children, right? He has custody. Let's say he's now with his wife. And all of a sudden you change him, right? Well, you're going to lose him.
Yeah,
so
they're automatically going to get fired up.
Right. So recruiting should be like, making sure of this guy's area where he lives. And they should be making sure that you can say without a doubt, yes, driver, our home time policy for that area is this, and yes, you will get home. Now, driver, emergent and things happen. A load is held up and you don't get home that weekend. Weather happens. There's things that are going to be unforeseen in trucking. That's why I used to try to remind these guys because you may be scheduled to be home this weekend and something happens, and there's a million things that can happen when you're away from home. So you got to come here prepared to not flip out at the company. And if you see the guy's a hothead and he's like, listen to me, man, you do one wrong thing and I'm out of there, I'm going to quit. I wouldn't hire that driver. That's just the way I feel about it. Because if you got a driver that's going to come in, trying to give you the rules, then you're headed for disaster, because trucking is trucking and just crap happens, man. It's like, how many times when I was out on the road, was I supposed to be home and all of a sudden something came up, right? A load got held up, whatever the case is. And I didn't get there. So everybody's got to be able to work together. But here's what I told them also. It's up to recruiting to know all the runs. It's up to recruiting to have meetings with operations. You need to get with operations every week. What's changed? Is there anything that's changed?
Right.
Are these drivers in this area getting home less than drivers in this area? You need to be able to relay this to the drivers.
Right.
Also, maintenance. You need to be able, your director of recruiting needs to be so in touch with maintenance to be able to say, what do I have available in trucks this week?
Correct.
Because when you tell a driver, okay, our trucks are 1 to 3 years old, in all honesty, especially the last couple of years, the 1-year-old trucks, they ain't going to new guys.
No.
You know what I mean? Unless you've got that many empty trucks and you got the 1-year-old ones sitting around. But normally your senior drivers are getting those new trucks, and they should.
Right, they should.
Right. So, when you tell somebody you're getting a brand new truck, you better give that guy a brand new truck.
Well, not only that, but yes, also with the way things have been in the last few years, we know companies, they've said numerous times, I'm waiting for some trucks because of how the industry, how the production line got so held up getting their parts that they needed to put out these newer trucks. Some of the companies are still waiting for some of those tractors to come in. So, they're getting them in little batches at a time, but recruiting don't know they're getting them in that manner. So you do have to stay really in communication with maintenance. Another thing is Troy, you hit it right on the nose. When a driver comes in and he's saying he's being very, I'm trying to think of a really good polite word.
Demanding?
Yeah, but the way their attitude is, guys, listen, I'm sorry to say this, but we have a lot of drivers out there right now that don't have that attitude that companies are willing to take over you. And that's only because trying to please everyone is very hard. But when you have a driver that's being very demanding and very just not asinine, but just being very hard to deal with, hard to work with,
and not every
giving. It's a really good give and take, and if you don't have it, it's hard.
And not every driver has that attitude. So we're not trying. And this is the other thing. We're not trying to tell, hey, everybody that's listening to this podcast that you have a bad attitude in trucking. And we understand that drivers put up with a lot of crap, but you guys also got to realize that dispatch puts up with a lot of crap too.
Right.
You may be one of those drivers that say, look, I go anywhere and do anything. I'm a good driver. Right. And you may be one of those guys. And there's a lot of those guys that are good drivers out there, but there's also a lot of drivers that they'll, I don't want that load. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. They're told, hey, you're going to get home every 2 weeks. And then when they come in, they start trying to get home all the time, and trying to change the rules. Guys, you got to know when you come to a company that, if you try to change the rules, there's probably a good chance that it's going to be a bad relationship. So I would just tell everybody that, in all sincerity, trucking companies and truck drivers, we all have to go into this with the attitude of let's work together. Just in his email where he said he noticed a lot of times where loads are given by the planner to the dispatcher to the driver, that somewhere along the line, something is not told. He went in, I didn't read the whole letter. He went in there and told me that there was an incident where a driver in Georgia was told to take a load down to North Carolina. It was in that snowstorm, right? And because of the storm, the receiver was shut down. So when he got there, he was told, okay, go to a different place to pick up another load or whatever. I don't know exactly what he was doing, dropping a trailer or whatever. He got there and that place was shut down. So that right there falls back on operations, not knowing that you're sending a guy to a place that's not even shut down. And I think operations and safety and recruiting should be able to anticipate these problems that you actually cause with these drivers. Safety and operation, they need to also start taking responsibility when they cause a driver to get upset.
Absolutely.
Right. Not every driver is going to handle it calmly.
No, and not only that, and I don't mean to cut you off there, but when you deal with the weather right now and the storms, to sit there and expect a company knowing that they're going to be having a storm nearby and they're going to shut down because of the roads, especially in some of the southern states when they don't have the same type of road maintenance that the northern states have for keeping with the snow and the ice, you right there are not only putting that driver at risk driving in weather that's not really the healthiest for him to drive in. And I say healthiest, it's really safest. And then going to a company, you're going to get that driver worked up. Why do that to someone when you automatically can use your own head and say, well, a storm's coming. Let me check with them and see what their protocol is for when a storm comes. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Or even this particular storm. A simple phone call would have been, and in fact, to be honest with you, if I was driving for you, I would expect you to know this stuff. I would expect you to know that, hey, you're holding me up everywhere I go here. You sent me to North Carolina. That's close. You sent me to another place. That's close. Couldn't you have just picked up the damn phone and checked? That's your job. You're my guy. You're the guy dispatching me. You're the guy.
Driver manager, whatever they're called.
Right. This is you. We all have our responsibilities. Me as a driver, I'm delivering. I'm driving in this crap. I'm driving and doing what I say. Please uphold your end. So I would just tell all these trucking companies and truck drivers, listen, we're a family, we're a team, and we got to really act that way. And I'll be honest with you, there's going to be times where you have an asshole as a dispatcher or you have a liar as a recruiter. But you know what? Keep your dignity, drivers, and don't go to their level and act, in an irate way, because you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And safety and recruiting, guys, seriously, you get what you plant. You really do. If you're going to be constantly, messing a driver up on something you could have made a 5-second phone call for, honestly, I don't want the drivers to be flipping out at you, but at the same time, guys, you're bringing this on yourself if drivers are quitting within a week or two. Somebody's lying to those drivers, Rutan. I'm going to tell you that right now. If truck drivers are coming in and they're quitting really fast, then somebody is obviously not doing their job in recruiting or safety. So when that safety director said, well, all we got to do is get them through the door, that's bullshit. You got to get them through the door with integrity, okay? That's what you've got to do.
Well, they're the first representation of that company.
Right.
So if you're the first representation of your company's expecting you to represent them in the manner that they are, and that's generally supposed to be a good company. So if you're lying to the driver, and here's another thing, Troy, a lot of drivers, they're not going to speak to just one company. So reiterating what you offer them when they're coming into the door helps making sure that they understand what you're offering them, not what you're offering them and what the other company that they spoke to beforehand was offering. They mix things up. They're human too. But communication is what's key to everything.
Well, see, that's what I told him in my letter. I said, honestly, our communication is the breakdown in every industry. And so here's the one thing that I like, just some little checkpoints. First off, you have a recruiter talking to a driver, right? And they relay back and forth. And like you said, they hear stuff from 10 different companies, right? And so, you get one that comes in the door and they go, well, I was told 42 cents. Well, no, you were told, 40. I'm just using 42.
Right.
It could be 92 cents, whatever. No, I was told 90 cents. So you've got to, as a driver, you got to make sure you write this stuff down. But here's really what a trucking company, I believe, should do. They should have a basic sheet that gets signed by a driver every week. Now, that would protect both parties, and I told him, I said, look, the 4 biggest reasons a truck driver quits: money, home time, equipment, and running areas. That's the 4 biggest reasons a truck driver quits. It just is what it is.
Yeah, they don't usually quit over health insurance.
Right, and some could, but the bottom line is the main reasons are those 4. So if you had a check sheet, right? Because, how many times have you said to me, Troy, would you do this for me, right? And then, like, the next day you go, hey, how come you didn't do that thing for me? And I'll be like, I didn't hear you. You'll be like, I told you. And it's like...
That's daily.
Wife blocker, right? But no, seriously, like, it is what it is. Like you said, we're all human. Drivers are human. Dispatchers, recruiters, safety people. We're all human and working together. So what would be wrong with emailing or a checklist over to a driver? Here's the money you were told you were getting. Okay. You were told this. Here's the equipment you were told. Okay. That we have that, we'll make sure you'll get a truck between this year, 1 to 3 years old. Here is the home time that you're getting. And, that this is what we're going to try to make happen. As far as the home time, that's a real difficult one because, again, like I told you, people get stuck because of shippers, receiver, blah, blah, blah. But anyways, and have them also see, here's our running areas. Okay, you're getting regional, but you could be offered this. And I would just tell them, this is all subject to change. The problem with it goes back to trucking companies really need the drivers. And so if you pound it in a driver's ear, any negativity, a lot of times they're not going to show up because somebody else is promising them the world. So you've got to be able to do this with class, and you got to be able to have integrity. Okay. You got to be able to be sheer honest with these guys. Make sure they hear you. Have them sign a piece of paper with the 4 basic things. They know that what they're getting. And I think you would have drivers. I think the companies that have the drivers coming in with their eyes wide open,
they get more respect.
Well, they also stay longer. You know what I mean? Because if a driver quits 30, 60, 90 days down the road, 6 months down the road, that is going to be always an operational issue, except for maybe, drivers that have to quit because maybe you get a guy, he's over the road, he gets offered a local job. I mean, there's just so many things that have nothing
There are those other ones, yeah.
Well, see, and then a lot of trucking companies, I would just tell them, I don't think they realize that the trucking company ain't always to blame, and neither is the driver. You may have a guy that's over the road, he's with you for 8 months, a year, and then some crazy, incredible offer comes along. Do you expect him to turn it down? He may really like working for you, and he may really like everybody, but now it's like, hey, I got this incredibly good offer, and I could see my family more. I'm sorry, but I'm leaving my notice. Sorry. Guess what, guys? I don't even know where do you put that in your numbers when you're figuring your statistics out, because it's really not anybody's fault. It's just the guy had a great opportunity. In fact, that's what you probably put that on the chart as opportunity came up for driver and he took it. That's really what it comes down to.
That sheet that you're talking about, I can guarantee that a company, 10th Street, most companies all deal with 10th Street and have driver pulse. They communicate with their drivers through something to that effect in the very beginning, before they even come in and get onto Qualcomm and so forth. In that package, when they're sending everything back and forth, I bet there's a form that could be created by their tech department to have those few items in there where the driver just check marks it and signs it saying, yeah, I am aware of it. And then the driver has a copy of it too. That way, if anything does come up, you're sitting there saying, no, wait a second. I signed this paper that said I was going to get this. This is what you told me. If there's any differences, at least you are all covered. And why bring something that you can end up saving as far as a relationship with everybody if that communication is open? And if a driver has a great communicator with his dispatch, 9 times out of 10, dispatch works with you. If you say, hey, listen, I know I'm supposed to be out, but I have this coming up. Can we work this? And then I'll work another time. Whatever you want to work it. But if you're a good driver for your dispatcher's going to help you out.
Okay. Anyways, going back to...
That was just throwing that in as a communication thing.
Okay.
It wasn't really pertaining, but you know me. When do I make sense?
Hey, it's your podcast. Yeah, but no, honestly, going back to this, everybody has a responsibility. But yes, in the beginning, recruiting and safety definitely does have a responsibility. Drivers, you do too. You have a responsibility to listen to what you're supposedly getting. But I would just tell you, nobody has the solution to perfect retention. But do you want to know really where it starts more than anything with with retaining your drivers? You have to have a company that cares.
Right.
If you don't have a company that really wants the data and wants to really look to see where
or improve as a company.
Right, to improve. Exactly. If you don't have that, then you're just working for a company that doesn't give a shit. And I will tell you this, then they shouldn't complain about retention. You know what I mean? If they're not caring in the beginning.
Correct.
Don't start getting on each other's cases if you really don't know where's the hole? Where's the big hole at that you're losing your drivers? Is it in the beginning? Is it in the middle? Is it, whatever is it a personality conflict? Whatever the case is, you really need to set in place a retention program in your company, whether you hire an outsource to come in and look at everything, or you just hire one person in the entire company to monitor everything, to watch the numbers, and to really do the exit interviews and figure out how and why you're losing your drivers. I would say you got to care, and that's really what it comes down to.
Right. And companies, honestly, if you want to know more about this, contact Troy. He did this before.
Yeah, I was involved in a retention company.
So I mean,
absolutely.
it's something that he knows what he's talking about because he's experienced it with other companies and worked with them and helping improving them.
Yeah, but when you say contact me, I mean I don't do that anymore. So
no, you don't. But if they have questions, they can just talk to you.
I know, but I'm not about to spend hours and hours with every trucking company every day, Ruth Ann, for free. So Ruth Ann just gave you my free service trucking companies. It's not happening. I'm going to tell you that right now. I mean, we could talk for a minute, but I've got a full plate every day. I'm sorry. So hire yourself a retention company. If you really care about your company, start looking at that, because man, I'll tell you what, keeping your drivers longer is a huge money saver, and it's a good it's a good for both parties, for the driver, for every internal person. It's really, really a good thing. So,
it is.
let me just end it with this. I was talking to a company yesterday, and he told me they had hired this is internal. This ain't even driver turnover. It's a big company. I was talking to him. He was telling me how they hired this CFO, this bean counter, right? And the guy came in there and thought he was going to really start swinging a big stick, right? And really shaping everybody up and really doing it. He was a real jackass personality-wise, micromanager, just the whole 9 yards, right? Well, they literally, I don't even think he was there 6 months. Right. And people literally walked off the job because of this guy. Right. Mm-hmm. And so corporate flew in with a couple guys and they walked him off the property and said, "You're out of here, buddy." Because too many people went to because they have many terminals, this company. Mm-hmm. And so they went to the corporate top wigs and complained, and they looked into it and they were like, wow, look at the people quitting because of this guy. And so they flew in, and what I'm getting at is it could be a dispatcher, it could be the president, it could be operations manager, it could be safety director. If you have one guy and you do your retention and you find that this one guy is the reason for a lot of quitters, that guy has to go. If he's a jackass, that he's a micromanaging, people that micromanage any trucking company are not good for the industry. You need somebody to oversee, but you also need somebody to be able to go, okay, I got my safety director. I don't need to bother him because he's running that department. I've got my CFO. He's running that department. I got my operations manager. He's running that department. You shouldn't have to worry. But you know what the president should be worried about? He should be worried about customers. He should be worried about the customers and how's the customer relations going with that company, and then also overseeing to make sure the numbers are right. If the numbers are right in each department, you don't have to be a micromanager. And if you're a dispatcher and you're micromanaging everybody and you're constantly on everybody's case, guess what? You're going to be losing people, and eventually they're going to see, and your ass is going to be out of there. Ruth Ann, that's all I got to say on that matter. Let's move on. Or do you have something else?
Well, I was just going to say one thing. Don't expect someone to come in that has no experience in that particular area to come in and succeed. Just because they know figures doesn't mean they know how to run operations. Just because they know figures doesn't mean they know how to do recruiting. You have to know that specific type of area of expertise to be able to go in and give the advice and run that better. You can't go into something unknowing.
Let me say one other thing. I was talking to a guy the other day and he works for a company where they have trainers and they're looking to hire a couple trainers. Mm-hmm. And he was telling me, I said, what do you look for in a trainer? And he said, this is what they've got to do. They got to be able to handle everything, like check calls, they're logging. Everything has to be really good because they're going to be passing this information on to their students. Mm-hmm. He said, but first and foremost, we're not looking for a guy that's a micromanager. We're not looking for a trainer that's going to run our students off. He said, we're not looking for somebody with a Hitler type personality. You know what I mean? I should say a Napoleon, type of attitude where it's my way or the highway. I'm the boss. You're just the guy working for me, blah, blah, blah. Even their trainers, they will not take on a trainer because this is a company. I know this company, really good company, that they have retention programs put in place. And so they know that everybody has to fit into their company right. And therefore, everybody has a responsibility at that company. And so, Adam Dooley, the answer to your question, I believe 100% that yes, safety and recruiting, although not a final part of the retention, but they are the initial. And if a guy's quitting too quickly, that's the guy you need to start looking at any trucking company. And that's a bottom line. Ruth Ann, moving on. Thank you, Adam Dooley. Moving on. Gosh, you got something that you want to talk about? Hey, we had talked about last week in Oregon, Daimler not selling trucks over there. I guess the word got out this week that they got it straightened out now, and now Daimler's selling diesel motors back there. I just wanted to kind of update everybody on that.
Yep, that's now back.
Right, so now they're doing it. So, because you get this podcast, right? Somebody hears last week's podcast, and this is like, say, a year from now, and if they only heard that podcast, they'd be going, man, people don't know what you're talking about. I just bought a diesel truck the other day, man. Hey, so they're selling diesel motors again, and yeah, I got a little redneck in me. But no, hey, going right from there to, I heard that California this week has put like a halt on they're no longer going to be requiring a certain emissions by, what was it, like 2030 something. They were going to have to be all electric trucks in their state. I mean, can you imagine the disaster when that year rang around and like hardly anybody had an electric truck? I mean, that was crazy.
Yeah, they originally had it to where they wanted to have it's called CARB, which is California Air Resources Board. They withdrew their waiver request stating that everything has to have the emissions. They had to be strictly with the electric and so forth. And they now changed it to where they're not expecting that. Because honestly, I think they came to realize that it's not going to happen the way they want it to. So they submitted it on the November of 23. They had submitted the ACF, which is the Advanced Clean Fleets request, to the EPA, which would have required trucking companies of size and drayage to operations in the state to transition to zero-emission vehicles beginning last year, with entire fleets to be fully ZEF or CEV between 2035 and 2042, depending on the variety of the factors. Now that is done.
I mean, in all honesty, I'm really glad that that's out of here, because that was just kind of crazy. And I think California probably was thinking, well, they may have gotten close to that by bullying their citizens to buy electric only, but the rest of the United States wasn't buying into that. You know what I mean? To where they, in fact, it was like North Carolina or Virginia or one of those East Coast states was actually instilling the same type of emissions. They pulled that about a month ago. I don't know if you remember. They said, we're not going to follow California's protocol with that. And so, California was sitting there all by themselves thinking, wow, I mean, think about it. If you got a lot of people, bringing goods to your state and now they no longer can.
Right.
It's not even that they would be refusing, according to your own rule and law, nobody be able to even come into your state with like a certain emission. They would be hurting. And did you know California has the 5th largest economy in the world?
Yeah.
Just California alone. That's how big it is.
It's got so much industry in it. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, hats off to them for finally getting, their head out of their gazoo and coming to realization that they need to be more working with the rest of us instead of trying to stand out on their own. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I think a lot of the states were making, like, I remember reading articles between that and with like Love's and other truck stops saying how much it's going to cost them to convert their truck stops and build these areas for the electric vehicles. So if you have where California is insisting on that, how much money are they going to have to put out then to make more of that accommodation? So putting that restriction on them, saying you can't come in unless you have these, this specific electric vehicle type of emissions and so forth, but we're not going to have the proper availability for you to recharge and do what you need to do. No one's going to be able to come in there to be able to even go in, and even if they had the correct vehicle, because they wouldn't be able to do what they needed to do to get back out of California fully charged.
Agreed. I'm just gonna say agreed. No, but it is what it is. I'm glad that's and hopefully, down the road, if administrations change, they don't get back on that saddle. And, because obviously you see the change of the guard coming into the presidency and all this other stuff. And, hopefully, because the outgoing administration was on their side on that. And that kept them going, I would guess. And I don't think this new administration would be behind all that. So, anyways, with that being said, moving on. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about? I didn't realize we'd get so wrapped up in that retention thing. I would say there was one other thing. Let me just see real quick. Gosh. Nah, we'll say that for another time. You got anything else before we go into the word of the day?
I'm cool. I'm done.
You done?
I got it.
Stick a fork in you. No, okay, awesome. So, what do you got for the word of the day? Word Genius. I like to plug Word Genius. Word Genius. They have the word of the day. It's free. You sign up as free, and they will send you a new word. Most likely, Ruth Ann, I got to be honest with this Word Genius thing. I would say 98% of the words that you bring every week, I've never heard of. And they say, I forget the amount of words that most people know, but it's not as many as you really think. You know what I mean? As far as definitions and words. So with that being said, give us a new word to learn by Word Genius. You got it? What do you got? Wait, let me turn this up. Go ahead. Do it.
Perpend.
Perpend?
Perpend.
P-E-R-P-E-N-D?
Correct. Perpend.
Perpend?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is perpend? Perpend. Does it have anything to do with pending?
Nope.
Nothing. Okay, then I'm not even going to guess. What? Perpend.
To ponder or consider.
Perpend. So if I ponder or consider, I'm perpending.
Yes. My favorite time to perpend life's mysteries is on a long forest walk.
Interesting. Perpend.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Perpend.
I got to try to remember these words.
Yeah, it's really hard. I'm going to tell you. I get all these words, and you know how many times I try and remember to use them?
0. I'm going to try to use perpend today. See, I think it's like anything else. If you practice it, then you get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like guitar. If you start playing guitar and then quit, when you go back, you almost got to learn it all over if you only are like adamant about it, or, just not adamant, but if you're just a, somebody that's casual about it.
Right. It takes a lot. It does. I'm not gonna lie. But I could tell you right now, I'm looking at my word of the day folder. I've got 3,693 words in my folder that I don't use half of them all the time.
Wow. Okay. Perfect. We're out of here.
Peace.
Peace. Praise the Lord.